With the EOS R and RP, Canon introduced an entirely new lens mount for the first time in decades, the RF mount. And since then, Canon's been releasing new RF lenses at like a pretty frenzied pace. But that RF lineup is nowhere near as complete as the reigning EF lineup. Fortunately though, as many of you know, Canon also released an EF to RF adapter that allows EF lenses to work natively with RF cameras, which basically means that the lens's features and its focus work flawlessly. It is awesome. And that basic RF to EF adapter usually comes in around $99, but a lot of times, depending on where you're looking and where you're shopping, it can be found as like a free add-on with the R and the RP. But more than simply adapting lenses, Canon used this as an opportunity to do something pretty cool. And there's one version of the RF adapter that features a drop-in filter, and you can either have this as a polarizer or a variable ND. And the biggest benefit is that this filter sits behind the lens. So one side of the adapter mounts onto the RF mount of the camera, and the other side is an EF mount that adapts to any EF lens. So this means that for using the filter, you don't need to worry about lens diameter. It'll work with any lens, and it'll work with any lens hood. So if you're someone who's ever gone through the experience of having to switch filters from one lens to the other every time you swap them, and then you can't use the hood because the filter, and you can't reach the filter if the hood's on the lens, you'll appreciate this. Since this sits behind the lens, you can easily just swap out lenses anytime and the filter doesn't change. Most importantly though, with filters, you want them to be a good quality, and the ND that comes with this adapter is a really good filter. It doesn't give that dark X pattern that some lower quality filters do, and it really just doesn't negatively affect your image quality in any way. It only helps you, and the whole purpose of having an ND filter is to basically allow you to film in brighter locations, especially with a wide open aperture. So if you're using a lens like the Sigma 24 1.4, and I go outside at 1.4, everything's gonna be totally blown out, but if I use this ND filter, then I'm gonna still be able to use that wide aperture with a very shallow depth of field, even outdoors in bright light. And the design of this filter is really simple, and it's super easy, as you've seen, to swap filters in and out. There's a small dial that lets you adjust the filter pretty easily while using the camera. And it's a really cool design. Everything is very mechanical and satisfying. You can see little gears and parts moving around. I really enjoy the way that this filter is put together and designed. But it's not all perfect, and as great as this adapter is, there are a few cons that I found with it, some of which I actually consider to be pretty major. And the first one is the build quality. And the build quality is fine. But that's the problem, is that it's just fine. I'm gonna talk about price in a minute, but suffice it to say that for the price of this filter, the build quality should be more than fine. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with it. It kind of just feels like any adapter you've probably ever used, but it is more lightweight and plasticky feeling than I expected it to be. And I know you probably wouldn't want an adapter to be very heavy, because then your camera and your lenses are going to be heavier, but for $400, I'm just not super impressed with the build quality. And that's right, that's the price. This adapter with the ND filter is usually about $400, which is a lot of money. And as much as I love using this adapter, that price puts it beyond the budget for many people, myself included. I borrowed this one. I just used the regular adapter that came free with my EOS R when I bought it. So this also ties into my biggest complaint about this adapter, which isn't the price or the build quality, but it's the cost of a clear filter. If you're using this adapter and you don't want to use the polarizer or the ND, you need to get a filter adapter that looks just like these, but is totally clear. And that costs usually about $130. So you need to spend $130 for literally nothing, keeping in mind that the regular RF to EF adapter usually sells for $100. So the clear filter is a higher price than the entire regular RF adapter. But the reason that you need that clear filter is because if you remove the polarizer or the ND, because you're not using it, you're left with this empty space on the side of the adapter. And this exposes your camera sensor to dust and light, and you really just don't want to be using your camera with this exposed. So that clear adapter pretty much just fills that opening. I really think that's something that should be included for free with the adapter. I don't think you should have to buy that separately, especially considering how expensive this is in the first place. Now, please don't get me wrong. I do think this is an incredible tool and I really love using this adapter, but the reason I wanted to make this video is because when this adapter was first released, there was like a lot of talk and a lot of discussion about it, but I haven't heard anything recently. So I figured now that the hype has died down, it was a good time to sort of take an objective look at what works and doesn't work with this adapter, because it does offer some pretty awesome and unique functionality. As far as my personal opinion on this adapter goes, I think that it's really smart. I think it's incredibly innovative. I love the idea of it, and I would love to own one myself that I could use anytime I want, but the $400 price tag is just beyond my budget for an adapter. So as much as I've enjoyed using this one, I just can't bring myself to spend $400 plus the cost of a clear filter. Whether or not this drop-in adapter is worth it for you kind of depends really on your specific budget and how much of a positive impact this is going to have on your individual workflow. Now, when it comes to the Canon EOS R in general, it's pretty safe to say that I'm a huge fan of it, and that's no secret. I've made quite a few videos about it, so if you want to know a bit more about my thoughts on the EOS R, here are a couple of my favorite EOS R related videos that I put together to learn a little bit more about this awesome camera.